Hi everybody, it's our favorite day of the week again, and I have another wonderful recipe for you. This one is inspired by my weekend activities. I had to defrost a deep freeze, and in the process I found out that I have a lot of weird things in my freezer and that I need to find a way to use them. So we're going to make bread pudding today. And I've got a couple twists on it. We're going to use up some stuff that I've had in the freezer, and I've got one really helpful baking substitution, so hope this goes well. Okay, so first thing we need to do is talk about weird thing number one. This is flaxseed meal. I bought a bag of this about a year ago, when we were having some shortages in the grocery store and you could only buy so many eggs. Flaxseed meal, if you mix it with water, is a great substitute for eggs in baking. So I bought this thinking that, you know, I can use this in breads and cakes and things and save my eggs to be eaten as eggs rather than in baked goods. And it's just been sitting there, and now I need to use it. So without further ado, let's get started because this needs to sit for a little bit. Flax seeds come in two colors. They come either in golden or in brown. I think these are brown. I don't know. But they're just ground. You see that? They're just ground into a powder. Okay, so our substitution rate is 1 tablespoon of flaxseed meal for 3 tablespoons of water, and that equals 1 egg. Okay, so we need 4 eggs. So we're going to do 4 tablespoons of flaxseed meal. This has a really nutty flavor, really nutty aroma, and it has a lot of your daily fiber in it. It says 2 tablespoons of flaxseed meal has 11% of your daily fiber, so that's a good thing. It also has a lot of iron in it. And now we need 12 tablespoons of water, 3 per egg. So there's 1, 2, 3. So then we just whisk this together. I know it doesn't look like much now, but this is going to set for a little bit. It's going to set for a little bit, and it's going to get thicker, and it will have more of an egg texture. Now, you can't use this for everything. Obviously, it's not going to work for scrambled eggs or something like that. And they also tell me that if you are using something other than wheat flour, like an almond flour or whatnot, don't use the flax eggs. They say it doesn't work. It just turns really grainy. Okay, so that's just going to sit here for a little while, and it will thicken up, I promise. So we're going to put him off to the side. Okay, so spray our pan. Make sure you spray your pan so it comes out. Again, this is my favorite blue baking spray. Okay, in cleaning out the freezer, I discovered that I had an obscene amount of bread in my freezer. I mean, like 12 containers of buns and bagels and English muffins and all kinds of stuff. So I made stuffing for supper one night, and today we're making bread pudding. So what I did was, these are mostly hot dog and hamburger buns. They were starting to get kind of hard. I didn't want to throw them away, so here we go. What I did was I just cut them in chunks, about that size. Spread them out on a cookie sheet, put them in a 300-degree oven until they're not real crispy. See how we can that still gives a little. Okay. You want it dry but not crispy like a crouton. These are, like I said, mostly hot dog and hamburger buns. Some of these turned a little bit darker. They are Hawaiian rolls. Okay, so it doesn't really matter. I've done this with bagels and English muffins. Croissants are really good in here. French bread, just any kind of bread. I left the chunks like this. If you would rather, you can cut them in smaller pieces, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so this is 8 cups of dried bread, 8 or 10, roughly. Okay, so this is the bread. Now we're going to continue making the custard that goes on top. Okay, bread pudding is not an American pudding, not, you know, when we say pudding, we think chocolate, banana, we think the little pudding cups, right? This is more of an English type of pudding. The English have a lot of things that they call pudding, like figgy pudding, plum pudding. It's kind of like this, okay? It's a way to use up stale bread, and that's okay because it's delicious. Okay, so let's check on our eggs. They're thickening eggs, flax eggs. They are getting a little thicker. I don't know if you can really see that, but they're not as watery. They're getting a little bit more viscous. And this works really well. I've used this in cinnamon rolls. I've used this in quick bread. You know, when you get partway into the recipe and you realize you need 3 eggs and you only have 2, you can break this stuff out of the freezer and have an egg whipped up in no time. Also, flaxseed meal, I know I had it in the freezer. You don't have to keep it in the freezer, but it does keep it nicer for a longer amount of time. Okay, so those are looking pretty good. I don't know if you can see that. See? They're getting more viscous. And the more you whip them back and forth, the thicker they get. Okay, so we need a cup of heavy whipping cream. If you don't have heavy cream, that's okay. Today I have half and half. And that will work perfectly fine. Just going to add this. Okay. And then I need 2 cups of milk. The recipe says whole milk, but I never have whole milk. I always have 2%. Okay. So there's our 2 cups of milk. And then we need 3/4 of a cup of sugar. Just plain white sugar, nothing fancy here. You know, bread pudding is one of those really underrated treats. When I was in grade school, they made it probably about once a month. And they had this wonderful lemon sauce that they put on it. Oh my gosh, it was so good. I have not been able to duplicate that lemon sauce. I wish I could. So tasty. Okay, and then we need just a sprinkle of nutmeg. And we need some cinnamon. We're gonna do 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Oh, that nutmeg smells amazing. Okay, and then our vanilla. This calls for 2 teaspoons. I'm just gonna eyeball it. And this is the good Mexican vanilla. So if I go a little bit shy, it's okay because this has tons of flavor. Okay, so we just whisk gently to combine everything. This is just such a comforting treat. It's got the cinnamon in it. It's custardy, it's thick, it's warm, it's delicious. It's very comforting. For me, anyway. And I make it a lot. Just because it is so good. Okay. So that's all combined. Now we have 2 more things to put in the pan before we put the custard in. We're gonna do about 1/2 cup of chopped pecans. If you don't like the pecans, you can definitely leave them out. If you have walnuts or another kind of nut, you can use that as well. I just sprinkle them down over the top. And these are just walnuts, pecans that I have chopped. That was another thing I found in my freezer. Lots and lots of half bags of nuts. You know, you use some for cookies and then you rubber band it shut and throw it back in the freezer, and somewhere it gets lost in there. Okay, now we need some fruit in here, because while this is wonderful just by itself, some dried fruit really adds a nice flavor. So the original recipe calls for dried cranberries, but I found two things in my freezer that I don't even know where they came from, and I really need to use them. So I have dried blueberries. I have no idea where I got these, but they're really tasty. And I thought that would go really well in there. The other thing that I found, and I really have no idea where I got these, this is dried berries and golden raisins. Okay, and this is cranberries, cherries, and raisins. So I know people have strong feelings about raisins. If you're okay with them, you know, put them in. If not, try something else. I really have no idea where I got that. But today we're going to use the blueberries, because I've munched on a few of these and I need to use them up and move on. Okay, and this is just another half a cup. And again, I'm just, you see, again, I'm just sprinkling down over the top, kind of break up the big clumps. Sometimes dried fruit tends to clump itself together. And make sure you get a few blueberries down in the nooks and crannies. Lots of blueberries. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be so good. And you know what? We're just gonna use them up. Lots of blueberries. Very tasty. Okay, now all that we need to do is pour the custard. This is a custard, by the way. This creamy mixture that we made. We're gonna pour that down over top. Okay, this is why you want to use dried bread, because if you use fresh bread, you will end up with mush. If you use the dried bread, of course it's dry, it will soak up this custard and it won't just be soup. Okay, it'll give it a really nice texture. When you pour this down over top, you don't want to just dump in the middle, especially with the flax eggs, because you want that flax seed to go throughout the whole dish. The same with the cinnamon and the nutmeg. You want that to go throughout the whole dish. If you were just to dump it in one spot, all of those solids would stay in one spot and you wouldn't have cinnamon through your whole bread pudding. And that would not be tasty. So we're just gonna pour gently over. So good. It smells wonderful already. Okay, now if you can see, there's quite a bit of stuff stuck on there. So take your spatula and scrape it down. Make sure you get all of the flax, all of the cinnamon. A lot of this that's stuck is cinnamon. So I definitely want that in there. Oh yes. Yes, 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 yes. Very tasty. Okay, scrape it all out. All right. Super simple, good way to use up oddballs in the freezer. Okay, so then we need to bake this. Okay, before we do, what I kind of do you see me poking some of those pieces of bread down in there? If there's a piece of bread that has not gotten much custard on it, if he's still pretty dry, I kind of poke them down in. Make sure they start soaking that up a little bit. Okay, they will get wet as we cook it, because this is going to steam. I mean, it's going to create steam, but you want to make sure that they all get some of that custard. Okay, so I'm going to let this sit for about 10 to 15 minutes and let it soak up. I'm going to cover it tightly with tin foil, and then I'm going to put it in a preheated 350-degree oven for 45 minutes to an hour. Again, it depends on your oven. If you have a convection oven, it's not going to take that long. If you have a cooler oven, which sometimes they are, it may take the full hour. You're going to do the knife test instead of the toothpick test. So take your paring knife and stick it down in the middle. If it comes out clean, it's done. If you still have stuff clinging to it, put it back in. because you don't want underdone bread pudding. It's not gonna be good, okay? So this is gonna sit here, like I said, for about 10-15 minutes, and we're gonna let it soak up the custard. I'm gonna cover it tightly with my tin foil, and then I'm going to put it in a preheated 350-degree oven, and when it's done, we'll show you what it looks like, okay? Be right back. Okay, so it has been an hour. Our bread pudding has cooked. I've let it cool to room temperature, and it's time for the unveiling. Are you ready? Okay, here we go. This smells so good. There we go. There is our blueberry bread pudding. If you notice, it is a little bit tender yet. It's not dry, it's not crispy. That's a good thing. It's nice and custardy. This is wonderful on its own, but it's also great for breakfast. You could put syrup over it. If you're having it for dessert, it's great with some whipped cream or a scoop of vanilla ice cream. There are also recipes for a vanilla sauce or a bourbon sauce, rum sauce, whatever you like. You can put that over it, but it's great just by itself. Okay, so nothing too fancy, nothing hard. Good way to use up some stale bread and some oddballs out of the freezer. This is blueberry bread pudding. Till next time, happy cooking, everybody. Bye-bye.